and developing to improve myself as a Muslim. But wearing a hijab does not weigh me down and prevent me from doing things. And I was just saying to somebody a few days ago that I still do things like whitewater rafting, like windsurfing, and I wear my hijab, and it doesn't tip over the sails. It can be quite an asset, in fact. There is nothing that women around the world cannot do if they set their minds to it, and whether they're Muslim, Christian, Jewish, atheist, Hindu, Sikh, there's nothing that any of us can't do.
I come here not as a Muslim, and I came here to learn about Muslimism and not about politics. But what does fascinate me is that the realm of suicide bombers that are going either, be it in the Middle East, be it in London, wherever, and who do it in the name of Muslim, how they can justify that to themselves, and how we can, as a caring populace, change that very culture, because it seems, as an outsider, to be so imbued in them. They don't care what it does to their families, nor to anybody else, the other people that they kill. And I think it's a very real problem for the world to try and give that sense of caring back to those disaffected people.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, that's a great question, and you can't just lump all of those people into one area. I actually looked into the background of a so-called suicide bomber in Palestine 2 years ago to try, and it was research I was doing for a book, to try and understand what makes a young man want to blow himself up. And this particular young man, his father had cancer, but it was curable. All he needed to do was to walk out of his house, go across the road, go through an Israeli checkpoint, and go to the hospital 5 minutes away every day for chemotherapy, and his cancer would be cured. The Israeli checkpoint refused to allow him through, and eventually the cancer went from being curable to terminal. Now I want you all to imagine this is your father. This is your father who's suddenly gone from having curable cancer to terminal cancer. You're watching him die. There is nothing you can do. The soldiers at the Israeli checkpoint are refusing to let him through for treatment. And I actually had some non-Muslim students from Bristol University. I was telling them this tale, and I said, come on, what are you going to do? Your father is dying in front of your eyes. What are you going to do? And one of them said, well, I would write to the UN. And I said, well, that's very nice. Israel has violated and ignored more than 72 UN rules and regulations. They're not going to take any notice of the UN, not for your father. Come on, what are you going to do? And they were getting really upset and agitated. And really, one of them was nearly in tears because he could see, it's my father, what am I going to do to help him? And his father died, the most excruciating, painful death imaginable, because he didn't even have painkillers. I'm not justifying what that young man did, but that was his background. In Chechnya, you have the Black Widows, the women who also strap explosives to themselves and blow themselves up. They're using their bodies as weapons. It's the only thing they've got. If they wanted to really commit suicide, they would slash their wrists and be done. They're trying to fight a war. Chechnya is the forgotten Palestine. You look at every single profile of a so-called Chechnyan Black Widow. Invariably, their husbands have gone, disappeared, murdered by the Russian army. When the Beslan school atrocity happened, and over 300 children died in that horrendous situation last year, nobody would have cried harder than the Chechnyan mothers, because in the last decade they have lost 42,000 of their children. They know what the pain is like. And when you've lost your children and your husband, and you've been gang raped by drunken Russian soldiers, maybe there is nothing left inside, and you want to fight back, and you fight back the only way you think you can. I'm not justifying it, but look at the backgrounds of these people. The London bombings, the only surprise was that it didn't happen sooner. We knew it was linked to the illegal war in Iraq. And you know, we've had 2 minutes silence for the innocent victims, more than 3,000 in 9/11. We had 2 minutes silence for those beautiful young people who perished in Bali, for the people who were killed in Kenya, Indonesia, Madrid, and now London. And then yesterday, another unexpected innocent victim of the war on terror, a young Brazilian man who was buried just a few hours ago in his hometown after being shot dead by British police. We've had 2 minutes silence for all of those people. But what about the deafening silence of the hundreds of thousands of innocents who've died in Palestine, in Iraq, Afghanistan, Chechnya, Kashmir, Uzbekistan? You know, it's when 9/11 happened, one of the things that was played over and over again, I remember, was one of the passengers from the plane who realized she was going to die. And she picked up her cell phone and switched it on, and she dialed her home. Nobody was there, so she left a message on the answer machine. And she left a message of love to her family. It was her final words on this earth, messages of peace and love to her family. And that message was played again and again, and it still brings tears to my eyes when I think of how helpless she must have felt, an innocent victim of 9/11. But just because a woman in the Gaza Strip doesn't carry a cell phone in her purse, or a woman in Kabul doesn't have a mobile, or a woman in Basra or Babylon or Baghdad or Chechnya or Kashmir, just because they don't have mobile phones in their purses, it doesn't make their life any less valuable. But unfortunately, in this unequal world in which we live, the life of a Westerner is worth so much more than the life of a Muslim. Muslim blood is very cheap. And where there is injustice, resistance is the only answer in any walk of life. Fortunately, in places like New Zealand, our resistance can take place by writing a letter to the newspaper, by phoning a late-night phone-in show, by signing a petition, by marching, by voting in the elections, as long as you vote for the right candidate. Doing something, reacting. It's our duty as human beings, as people who care about justice. And until there is justice in the world for everybody, there is never going to be peace, and that is the reality.
About yourself and in your relationship with a god or religion. It says in this newspaper article that you have a certain amount of disorder in your life in relation to cigarettes, alcohol and relationships. I just wonder why you have to embrace a religion, any religion, in order to get some sort of order back into your life. Thank you.
I didn't. When I was, I worked hard and I played hard. And because I worked hard and I played hard, it had a knock-on effect, and I had a disastrous private life. But that was while I was a Christian, you know, the twice-a-month practicing Christian. I only sorted out most of those problems, apart from the cigarettes, when I embraced Islam. And the reason, I didn't think that that would actually happen as quickly as it did. And the reason it happened as quickly as it did is because if you follow Islam, your life becomes so much more simpler. All the excesses of Western living just falls away, and you're left with a very wholesome, simple life and a code of ethics, and not unlike the similar codes in Judaism and Christianity. And you, it's just a better code for living. So I swapped one religion for another, but I found the simplicity of Islam simplified my own life. And my friends will tell me that I'm looking happier and healthier and more confident and more fulfilled. And it's quite funny because my girlfriends still refuse to believe that it's Islam. And these liberated, hard-drinking journalist women are saying, we know why you've converted to Islam, it's got to be for a man. And I said, no, it's not. I've done it for me. And it was one of the best moves that I made.
Was Islam hard for you to learn?
Islam is it's a challenge, and each day we meet that challenge full of optimism, and we try and evolve and develop and strive towards being a perfect Muslim. I am a long, long way from that, but I am striving and trying every day, and I will get there, inshallah. So make dua for me.
Thank you, my girl.
One Islam Productions, an Islamic film studio established in Australia, is dedicated to producing films for all Muslims. Just some of the films by One Islam Productions: children's programs, Islam